Thank you so much for the very warm welcome. Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me very clearly. Magandang umaga. To all of you students who are here tuning in, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to be part of this panel in hopes that I'll be able to share my experiences and to provide you with motivation or pieces of advice as you um, as you go on with your daily life and trying to really thrive in this time of pandemic. And so before I answer the first few questions, I just like to provide further information about myself. So as mentioned in the introduction, I used to work for the University of Melbourne, but the school that I specifically worked at was called Trinity College. And so within Trinity College, our students are, all of them are international students. Our college is specifically a pathway school for students who hope to enter the University of Melbourne. And so all of our students are, most of them are between 16 to 20 years old from all around the world. I had students who came from Chile, who came from Ecuador, from China, from Singapore, Malaysia, some from the Philippines as well. And so it was a melting pot of cultures. And so how these people adapted to the pandemic was also very different. And I was very privileged to be able to have a front seat to how they thrive during this time. And so the responses that I hope to provide to these questions would be coming from the perspective of an educator, so perspective of professional staff, not so much from the student's perspective, but I hope that it's still valuable and meaningful to all of you who are listening to this panel. And so I was hoping to have slides and they're up and ready now, but I felt that it might be better for me to not use my slides as reference, so that we're able to have this conversation in a more personal manner. I believe that's something that all of us has experienced during this pandemic is that we're trying to replicate face-to-face contact. And I think the best way to make sure that we accomplish that really well is to not have slides covering my face. So I hope all of you are listening very clearly. I won't have questions for you, but at the end of the day, I hope you have questions for me. And so the first question that was posed to us panelists was, how are we able to frame a new mindset on remote learning during the time of lockdown? So to give context, in Melbourne, our lockdown was very stringent. We were not allowed to go out at all, except for essential services. So essential services included going to the doctor, going to the grocery. We are not allowed to go beyond a 5-mile radius. And so you can sort of imagine how different those restrictions would be in the Philippines. Our students, of course, had to stay indoors. We're not allowed to go out. We're not only allowed to go out once a day. And all of our students had to stay at home or not able to go on campus. Seeing all these things, it was not simply difficulty in their education, but it was actually a lot to do with their mental health. And so for myself as a well-being officer, I realized that instead of highlighting the difficulties in learning, it was a redirection to look at opportunities. And so we knew what was happening, we knew our current reality. And so we needed to do our best in order to alleviate that. We had to cater to our students really well and had to make the best out of what we had. In truth, as I'm sure all of you can attest, distance learning can never replace face-to-face teaching. Some of you may miss your classmates, some of you may miss your teachers, I hope. And so on our end as professional staff, we had to look at the opportunities. We had to be positive in that way because we wanted to give our students the best quality education as much as possible, even though that may have been delivered online. And so, next question is, how exactly did our university respond to this? We responded to this by fully utilizing what we already had. We had resources such as laptops, computers, iPads that we gave our students. some of them already, they had the privilege to own them already. We provided workshops to our students and of course to our teachers as well, who even though they've used the internet or Zoom and all of these resources before, they were not as proficient as I'm sure after a year all of us are already. And so sometimes our teachers were not really sure how to share a video or how to share a PowerPoint. Sometimes they didn't know whether they were unmute or unmuted. And so we actually had to provide workshops for our teachers to make sure that all of these could be allayed once they do provide their classes to their students. But moving beyond that, beyond the technicality, our school was actually very, I would say, we really emphasized the need to support our students' well-being. Our school is very, I'm very proud to say that the school that I work at has systems in place to make sure that students are well supported. So our counselors were ready to be there in case any of our students needed someone to speak to. Our teachers are also quite well equipped to provide counseling services because our students are most of them are 16 to 18, as I mentioned, and some of them are struggling mentally. A lot of them fell into depression. A lot of them were starting to be absent in classes. A lot of them have also skipped exams, and these are very important, of course, because we wanted to make sure that we were accountable for them when they were away from their families. We wanted our school to be their home away from home. And how are we able to do that when we couldn't even see them face to face? And so as much as possible, we made sure that we had free workshops for them to attend to take care of their well-being. We created a curriculum specifically embedded into their timetable to make sure that these students are able to take care of themselves when we are not there to take care of them. So this curriculum was actually embedded in their timetable, and it was mandated for every student to attend. Topics that we touched on were sleep, movement, building connection during this time, and so on and so forth. A lot of our students were not sleeping very well. A lot of them were staying up. A lot of our students were not eating because they weren't able to go out frequently. They usually ordered Uber Eats, which I believe in the Philippines translates to Food Panda. And so, all of these students, as young as they were really struggling beyond their academics. And so we knew that as staff, we wanted to help them as much as possible by providing them with the right support. We were also there to provide references to professional help, be it a psychologist, psychiatrist, or even just speaking to our school counselor. And so as staff, that was just something that we were very particular about. We knew that during this time, there's a really big struggle. All of them were worrying about their health, about their parents back home, about their studies. But we wanted to prioritize their overall well-being, of course, because it's only in taking care of their well-being that they're really able to focus on their studies and do the best that they can. And so one other thing that I wanted to mention was we wanted to alleviate Zoom fatigue. So I'm sure all of you have experienced this before where you're sitting in front of your computer for hours on end, you're tired, and you feel burnt out, but it's really hard to explain that to other people because we're all experiencing it. Am I right? And so we wanted to ensure that for our students that we provided them the breaks that they needed, be it providing well-being packs by knocking on their doors, creating surveys, asking them how they were genuinely, and making sure that we were there to support them as much as we could. And so the third question is, what are our best practices to make remote learning effective and, productive, efficient in meeting learning needs, goals, and academic requirements? So the number one thing that I hope all of you can take out from this question is it's very important to be present in mind, body, and heart. So, even just simply turning on your videos while during your class is very important, because it demonstrates to your classmates and to your teachers that you're here physically. In mind, not having YouTube playing on the background, not listening to music, it's also very valuable, because this is still your education. Am I right? So these are some small tips. And of course, in heart, um, I think during this time, a lot of you may be experiencing self-doubt. Um, why are you here? Why are you doing this? Is it even worth it when you're paying, this amount of money when you could be studying um, something else? Or, perhaps distance learning is not how you hope for it to be. But, keep on reminding yourself why you're taking up this course. Why are you studying? Why do you want to obtain an education? These small reminders are very important to motivate us and really spur us on. I believe Mr. C also mentioned it earlier, that it's, we need to know why we're here. And those are the same words that I share with you. It's very important for us to have a plan when you go to your class. One of the things that we encourage our students was, plan their timetables, really manage their time, to make sure that they have time for play, for leisure, and of course to time for work, because these are all very important. It's very important for you to remember as well, to know what your purpose is. Um, Being able to engage successfully in school is to know what your purpose is, but of course to own it even more. And so these are just tips that I leave with you when you think of your remote learning, to make sure that they're as productive and as efficient as possible. Because I'm sure all of you who are listening to this webinar, all of you, deep down in your heart, you want to succeed. You wouldn't be here in this webinar if you don't want to, unless you were forced, which I hope not. I hope it's still valuable to you as you're listening to this. But it's very important for you to constantly remind yourself why you're here, to create a plan, to really realize the reason why you're here, and of course to own it and to really make full use of that. And so the subsequent three questions that I hope to answer touches more on career. So of course the first few questions were more so on studying, but I believe questions about careers are probably what troubles us at the moment. I'm sure all of you are quite anxious about the future. And I also want to ask you the question, how are you spending your lockdown? How are you spending your quarantine time for your future career? Um, I personally made sure that I was persistent in making sure I was quite employable. My job at that time was considered very essential, and so I was lucky enough to not have been made redundant. But I knew deep down that I needed to make sure I was still qualified, that I shaped and reshaped my skills, that I further fortified what I already had. I took up different courses. Again, Mr. C mentioned courses course websites, such as Coursera, EDX. These are course sites that I personally have used as well, and have realized the value in. And so these are the same websites that I share with you. I hope that you're able to take up every opportunity that you can to grow and to learn. I also reached out to people who worked in the same industry as I did. I hope all of you have a LinkedIn. If not, perhaps now is a good time to create one. And so, during my time in my time in quarantine in Melbourne, I made sure to fully use LinkedIn and to connect with people who I wanted to work with in the future, who were working in the companies that I want to work for, and who were basically doing the same things that I hope to one day be able to do. And so I used it extensively. This meant, really revamping it to make it as attractive as possible. The second one would be engaging with people who I did not know, but I was confident enough to reach out to and to contact. I also posted extensively, some of my personal reflections, some of my achievements. And so that's one thing that I leave with you. I hope you're using your LinkedIn. And again, if not, I hope you create one after this webinar. I made sure to develop personally and professionally. These are very important because I knew I didn't want to be stagnant. For me personally, it was not enough that I was surviving the pandemic. It's important for me to thrive. And so again, I hope it's the same with you. It's not enough to survive, but it's very important to thrive during this time. And the fifth question is, have I discovered new skills or competencies? Definitely, I would say so, because I did take up a lot of courses on Coursera, watch videos on YouTube. But in terms of soft skills, I really would say that I increased my capacity to be flexible, to be resilient, to be really strong in times of adversity. Because as you know, perhaps all of us experienced this, but 2020 was a really tumultuous year. There were a lot of changes, and a lot of these changes were unplanned for, unprecedented. And so, I was not ready at all. But I really commend myself for being able to respond as gracefully as I did. And so this requires a lot of course, personal training and a lot of deep reflection as well on my strength in character and in skill as well. And so, I was very fortunate to not have been made redundant in my job, as I mentioned. But again, I needed to make sure that I furthered my qualities, in different ways, be it in volunteering, be it in taking up different opportunities to give, workshops, different talks, and of course, different courses, which are very, very valuable. And my response to the last question, I hope I'm making this response as succinct as possible, would be, comparison is a thief of joy. And I'm sure all of you are, perhaps are comparing yourself to other people, who are posting all these wonderful things that they're doing in social media. But I would actually like to say that the only person or that we should be comparing ourselves to is who we were before, who we are at this present moment, and who we will be in the future. Because, all of us are, they say all of us are on the same boat, but we're not. All of other people have bigger boats. Some boats have holes in them, and we are not on the same journey as well. But how we respond to where we are at this present moment is very important. There have been a lot of slaps of reality during this time, am I right? A lot of people being anxious about the future. But one well-being tip that I leave with you is actually trying to imagine where you want to be is very important, and actually boost your positivity and boost your happiness. It allows you to be so much more excited and allows you to look forward to the future. And so, it may be quite radical to tell you not to compare yourself to other people, but that's something that I hope that that you do, because a lot of people are thriving, a lot of people are doing these things on social media, but we really should take the time to self-reflect. It's okay to not do anything. How we cope in times of adversity is very different from how other people do. And so it's very important for us to really take care of ourselves. And if that means just taking the time to reflect, taking the time to take breaks, making sure that we're surviving, it's also very important. It's also valuable. What other people do is just as important as what we would do. And so don't be deterred, or don't be discouraged or disheartened by other people's achievements. Just focus on your own. And so probably one last thing that I leave with you is I constantly remind myself that I'm exactly where I am for a reason. And so perhaps it's something that you need to hear. And so these are the same words I leave with you. You're exactly where you are right here listening to this webinar for a reason, and that's okay. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope that was very valuable, and I look forward to hearing your questions later. Thank you.